September 12, 2025. The clock struck 12:25 a.m. on the Baltic coast. Two gigantic tankers of Russia's infamous Shadow Fleet stood quietly at the port of Primorsk, their bellies ready to be filled with millions of barrels of crude oil. It was supposed to be another routine night. Calm seas, cold winds. Just another shipment fueling Moscow's war machine. But then, a radar operator hundreds of kilometers away stared at his screen, his heart skipping a beat. Because suddenly, out of nowhere, more than 70 unidentified objects appeared, moving silently across the night sky. They were small, fast, and almost invisible. And together, they carried over 3 tons of high explosives. For Russia, this was the nightmare scenario they had always trained for. For Ukraine, this was checkmate. But before I reveal how 7 tiny machines slipped through one of the world's most advanced air defense networks and brought Russia's largest oil port to its knees, hit that like button to support the channel and make sure to subscribe. Because what you're about to hear sounds like a movie, but it's real, and it changes the way wars will be fought forever. The first warning at the Neboem long-range radar station, somewhere in the forests of southern Russia, a young operator rubbed his eyes. He thought it was a glitch. 70 signals? That couldn't be right. These blips were faint, their radar cross-sections so small they almost disappeared. But as seconds ticked by, the signals grew clearer. They were moving directly toward Russian airspace. The operator froze. His gut told him this was no accident. Within minutes, the 91N6E Big Bird radar, the crown jewel of Russia's S-400 system, confirmed it. Sirens screamed at the Leningrad Oblast Air Defense Command Center. Red lights flashed. Phones rang. Screens lit up with incoming tracks. Russia's generals had seen this picture before. In every war game, in every simulation. This was the moment their entire anti-access area denial A2 AD bubble was designed for. Calmly, almost confidently, they gave the order. Engage all targets. The Russian shield ignites suddenly. The night sky above St. Petersburg and the Leningrad countryside lit up with fire. The massive 92N6E gravestone radars began locking on. Missile canisters of the S-400 batteries snapped open. At lower altitudes, Pantsir S-1 systems came alive. Their twin 2A38 M30mm cannons roaring, spitting out 5,000 rounds per minute in blazing arcs of tracer fire. It was chaos, a storm of steel and fire. On Russian screens, targets blinked out one after another. Drone icons disappeared. Young officers cheered. Reports echoed through bunkers. Sector clear. All targets destroyed. The general smiled. It was working, but that smile would soon turn into horror, because what looked like victory was the biggest trap of their careers. The trap, the attack wasn't random. It wasn't chaos. It was a chess game. Carefully set up months earlier in a planning room in Kyiv. You see, Ukraine knew it couldn't just fly drones straight into Russia's most heavily defended airspace. The 1,000 kilometers range itself was a near impossible challenge. But the real problem is the Russian umbrella, the densest integrated air defense system on Earth. So Ukraine came up with something new, something brilliant. A would use deception on a massive scale. Dozens of decoy drones, cheap plywood bodies with just enough electronics to fool radars, were sent swarming toward Kyiv. Russian villages, Zelensk, Tosnopakovsko, Yuzmino, and even the districts of central St. Petersburg. The Russians had no choice. Their most powerful S-400s, their elite Panzer units. They all focused on these phantoms. And as they did, the real killers slipped through the cracks. The assassination squad hidden among the chaos was a smaller, deadlier group. 15 UJ-26 Bobber extended-range drones. These weren't plywood toys. They were specially modified kamikaze platforms, capable of flying 1,000 kilometers. One way with a 40 kilograms warhead strapped to their nose. Beside them flew the Banshee 7 electronic warfare drones. Their mission? To blind Russian radars and jam Pantsir fire control systems with brutal high-frequency noise. Together, they formed the assassination squad. It's their destination. The port of Primorsk. Russia's economic heart. It's the gateway for 20% of its oil exports. Billions of dollars flowed through those pipelines. And that night was all about to burn. The silent flight at midnight, More than 70 drones launched from Ukrainian soil. For hours, they flew in total silence. No signals, no GPS pings. They skimmed the ground, hugging riverbeds and forests, following preloaded terrain maps like shadows. It was a brutal journey. Some crashed into trees, others simply failed mid-air, but this was expected. Losses were part of the plan, because all that mattered was that enough of them reached the Russian border. And when they did, the game changed. No more silence. Now it was about survival, about deception, about overwhelming Russia's billion-dollar defense grid with swarms of $20,000 plywood ghosts. And it worked. Russia's overconfidence. By 3 a.m., Russia's defense network had gone into overdrive. Dozens of S-400 missiles streaked across the night sky, hunting down cheap decoys. Russian state TV would later boast 221 Ukrainian drones destroyed. No damage. Victory. But the reality. Every missile they fired was a pawn sacrifice, because while their radars danced with phantoms, the real killers. Just 7 Babura drones slipped unnoticed toward Primorsk. Part 7. The breach. It was 4:45 a.m. At Primorsk, the local Panzer battery suddenly woke up to 7 tiny blips racing toward the port. The operator panicked. He fired missiles, then cannons. But it was too late. Drones were too low, too fast, too close. They split into 2 groups. 3 went for the pumping station, 4 went for the tankers. What happened next? Changed the war. At Primorsk. The first drone dove into the control building of the pumping station. The thermobaric warhead ignited, sucking the oxygen out, crushing walls outward with a brutal pressure wave. Seconds later, the second drone smashed into the pipeline manifold. The port's lifeline severed, alarms wailed. Fireballs lit the night. Meanwhile, 4 more drones screamed toward the 2 massive tankers, the Captain Lob and the Sergei Gorshkov. One drone tore through the bridge of the Captain Lob, frying its electronics. Another slammed into a cargo tank, spilling oil into a growing inferno. The Gorshkov wasn't spared. Explosions ripped its engine room apart. Loading manifolds shattered. Within minutes, 2 tankers, each carrying nearly 700,000 barrels of oil, were burning like floating volcanoes. Primorsk, the jewel of Russia's shadow fleet, was turning into hell itself. The global aftershock satellite images soon told the truth Russia couldn't hide. Columns of black smoke rose for miles. Flames reflected across the Baltic waters. Billions of dollars. Gone. 20% of Russia's oil exports. It's offline. And the world took notice, because this wasn't just about Russia or Ukraine. This was about the future of warfare. Future where a handful of cheap drones could cripple a superpower's economy. Where brains, not budgets, decided the battlefield. Russia had the numbers. The radars. The missiles. The bunkers. But Ukraine had something else. Imagination and timing. By flooding the sky with cheap decoys? By using EW drones to blind radars? By picking the perfect moment when shift changes and system delays aligned? They had outsmarted a giant. On paper, Russia's defenses were invincible. In practice, they were human, and humans make mistakes. The new age of war. What happened that night at Primorsk wasn't just a battle, it was a signal to the world that wars are no longer won by those with the biggest guns, but by those who think differently, by those who turn plywood into weapons, by those who know how to blind billion-dollar radars with a $100 jammer. It was a 1,000 kilometers gamble, a gamble that worked. It proved one thing above all: even the most powerful fortress can be brought to its knees. That was the night the world saw the future. A night when drones, not fighter jets, plywood, not steel, brains, not budgets, reshaped modern warfare. And the question now is, who will be the next to play this deadly game? If you found this story eye-opening, smash that like button to support us. And hit subscribe so you never miss these deep dives into the hidden battles shaping our world. Because the next one might shock you even more.